Okay, first of all, guys, I just want to warn you ahead of time that this is a bunch of randomness. I do apologize ahead of time. But having said that, so I was thinking this week about what I wanted to do for the Midweek Minis episode for this week, and I wasn't coming up with a whole lot. And then I got this notification on Facebook that my mom had shared something to my Facebook page, and it was this picture of this little girl and her doll. After I read the caption, I knew I have found today's episode.
Triple M Studios proudly presents Midweek Minis. And here's your host, Andrea Lee.
Now, the caption on that picture that I was talking about said, in 1800s New York City, Jane Bielawski received a doll she named Missy. Soon after, several of Jane's friends died violently, and Jane was always around when the, quote, accidents, end quote, happened. While being questioned by police, Jane would blame Missy for the murders, and on one occasion, she threw Missy out the window while yelling, "Bad Dolly, naughty Dolly." Jane was interned in Bloomingdale Asylum and treated for hysteria. Jane was never released, and she passed away of old age in 1968. Throughout her life, she maintained that Missy was evil and she murdered her friends. Now, that picture, I'm going to post it on the 3M Facebook page. Well, when I read that post, the first thing that came to mind was the old movie, The Bad Seed. If you're not familiar with it, I think it was made in the 50s, 1950s. It was this little girl that several people died, and she was always in the immediate area of the people who died, or when bad things would happen. And it's just a good creepy story, but just like this story is a kind of good and creepy. But the thing is, the story about little Jane and her doll Missy is not true. And as weird as this sound, I was kind of disappointed to learn that it was just a hoax. Now, the entire thing was fabricated, and the story started making its rounds on the internet around 2009. Well, I do like to keep these episodes shorter, like in the middle, like the weekend episodes and the midweek minis. But I'm not going to cut it off right here. I got to thinking about how women were basically thrown in asylums back in the day for the oddest things. And not just really women, but men too. Although it seemed to be more common for women. Now, back in the 19th century, masturbation, of all things, was quite a common thing to get thrown in an asylum for. I mean, it sounds absurd, but back then it was a taboo subject, and if you engaged in it, I guess they thought you had a mental illness and you needed to be treated for it. And get this, if you smoked tobacco products at the same time as partaking in pleasure in yourself, that was even worse in their eyes. I know, right? Every once in a while, a post makes its social media rounds, and I just saw it a couple of weeks ago on Facebook, but it's about reasons for being admitted to Trans-Allegheny Asylum in West Virginia between the years 1864 and 1899. Now, I checked with Snopes and a couple other sources to make sure I wasn't about to mislead you guys, and I got some pretty good clarification on the things. Now, the list that goes around on Facebook and different social media includes things like laziness, female disease, mental excitement, greediness, imaginary female trouble, exposure, and quackery, which I'm not sure what quackery means, religion, asthma. That one alone would have me locked away, but novel reading and many other things. Now, the clarification is that these weren't like actual diagnoses of why people were committed to these asylums. It was actually symptoms of some things that led to the diagnosis of what they were actually in the asylum for. And it seems that a lot of the time, men had used these issues as a means to ditch their wives and take off with their kids. Now, I'm not sure why the stories of the old asylums like fascinate me so much, but I can remember there was a movie. It was made for a TV movie with it was called Queen, and it had Halle Berry in it. Now, at one point, her character ended up in an asylum, and I believe that's when all this fascination with asylums really started interesting me. Now, one of my most favorite places to visit and photograph is the old mental hospital on Bull Street in Columbia, South Carolina. There was a building there called the Babcock Building, and it's like every time I'm there, it just kind of like pulls me right to that building. There's a window that I'm always like drawn to look at, and I can always get the feeling of this young girl or young woman begging and pleading for help. Now, the last time I was there, my daughter was with me, and without prompting her or anything, she picked up on the same feeling. But I'm going to include the pictures that I took of the Babcock Building on the Facebook page also. And I was fortunate enough to photograph the property before the fire in September of 2020 that brought the dome down that was on top of the Babcock Building. It was a lot of sad stories more than likely come out of that building, but it was a part of the Columbia skyline, and it's just not the same now that dome is gone. But just wanted to add here too that we were told about the old sanatorium in Columbia. It was a tuberculosis sanatorium, I believe, but we went there and I photographed it too, but we didn't pick up on any kind of feelings. But I mean, it's not the same as a asylum. So, but anyway, now like I said at the beginning, this is so random. Like, this whole thing has been so random, and I want to add right here though, while we're on the subject of mental illness, I really wish that mental illnesses were taken as seriously as they did back in the day when the people were interned for like masturbation. But they should research more now so that they could offer more help and hope to these people that do have legitimate mental illnesses, so that they're not ashamed and, you know, can get the help that they need. Because, I mean, we're losing way too many people to suicide, men and women, and it's just heartbreaking. I mean, mental illness is just something that lays heavy on my heart, but I'm not trying to, you know, bring everybody down, but I just wanted to put that out there. Now, I do want to add too that over the past couple, like, well, really almost since the beginning of this podcast's debut, I've talked about several local crime stories, and I don't want you to think that I'm just leaving y'all hanging, but none of them I don't have updates on any of them. There was the one with the body that was found in a freezer in Norway, South Carolina back in January. Nothing has been, you know, no breaks in the case for it. And you would think with the distinctive tattoos that person, the victim, had, you would think that, somebody would recognize that, because, I mean, it was a portrait type tattoo. I just don't know what it's going to take to get people to come forward. And then there was like the missing ladies in Oconee County that they've been looking for. There's no news on that I have been able to find. And those unsolved murders in Union County, still nothing on those. And if you're listening, again, I'm going to say this again, if you're listening and you know anything about any of these cases, no matter how trivial or small you think it is, you know, get in touch with your local law enforcement and just tell them, you know, to get you in touch with the correct authorities. But, you know, you might have information that could break a case wide open, you know. Just think of like the closure you could help a family get. But I'm going to cut it off for now. That's all I've got for today. I'm sure you're glad, because that was a lot of rambling. I feel better now, though. Just got all that randomness out of my system. But y'all have a great week. This coming up on the weekend soon. But y'all have a good one.